Hi, everybody. I'm here. I'm a bit late due to some technical difficulties. I'll be with you in a minute. I have to share this a little bit. Hey, Rob. Hey, Kay. Hey, Steve. Nice to see you. I'll be with you in a minute. Share this a little bit. I'm sorry to hear you're getting nervous, Rob. By the way, please share this. I haven't had a chance to share anything because my system went south on me just before the live stream started. Just before I had a chance to start the live stream. And now Chrome is not responding, which of course is making me a problem. A problem. That may not be a problem for you. Hey, Rob. Hey, Kay. I can't tell how my sound is on your end at this point. Okay, I hope it's good enough. Please let me know. Chrome is still spinning around on me. But you should still be able to see me and hear me. And hopefully there are no echoes right now. Okay, I'm continuing the live stream because it's going to you actually through the connection of my expert software to Facebook. So my broadcasts should not actually be affected, but I'm going to have to, I think, go out of Chrome because Chrome is frozen. It's crashed on me. I've got very little load on it too, so I don't know what the hell is going on, but I'm going to have to end it and come back in. Okay, it's closed. I'm going to come into it again now. I hope you can hear me. Okay, I hope you can hear me now. I'm back in. Please let me know. I still can't see my comment thread. Okay, Carmen Muniz has joined. Okay, there we go. And Russ says, I am getting comment thread. Great. Rob says the audio is fine, no echoes. Thank you. Kay says Bernie's rally in St. Paul is huge now on YouTube. Go Bernie. Now I was watching it before I went on. And someone lets us know that Beto has announced Joe Biden. I hope that's not going to influence people because Beto is such a cipher. And Kay says Beto was never progressive, really. He just acted like he was. Yeah, like when he spread his wings, the wingman. Rob said, I knew he never was a progressive, but he seems to have quite a bit of influence in Texas. Well, he did earlier. Since he's lost, I don't know if it's true. Kay says Bernie's rally in St. Paul is huge now on YouTube. Go Bernie. And Rob tells me the audio was fine, no echoes. Thank you, Rob. And Kay says he was a lot better than Cruz in Texas. Sure. That's a very low bar. I mean, the only one who was worse than Cruz in Texas was Trump. Russ says, I was just listening to Ilhan at the St. Paul rally for Bernie. Oh my God, I love that woman. Me too. She has a real moral core. She's terrific. And Carbon Muniz has joined. Stacy Van Veen says 5 times 5. Steve Gonzo has joined. Rob has joined again. Had to drop out. Carmen says, I can hear you. Great, Carmen. And Bonnie's joined. Hi, honey. Okay, let's get on with it then. Okay, because we really have to get a whole picture of Super Tuesday. I'm going to share with you an article that appeared today in the New York Times. Here we are. It should be coming up on your screen as soon as I move away from the Facebook tab and into the Times tab. Okay, here we are. I want to direct your attention to this graphic, which was much larger, but I think still can be easily seen. So this gives a number of delegates in the various states that are at issue tonight. You notice that California is 415, Texas is 228, North Carolina is 110, Virginia is 99, Massachusetts is 91, the state of Minnesota is 75, Colorado is 67 delegates. Alabama is 52. Oklahoma is 37. Arkansas is 31. 29 in Utah. 24 in Maine. Vermont in 16. Dems Abroad 13. And American Samoa 6. Okay, let's begin at the tail end of this. Seems to me Bernie has a good chance both in the Dems Abroad group and also in American Samoa. Okay, I'm remembering from previous elections, okay, that American Samoa is pretty progressive compared to a lot of the country. So I'm thinking Bernie has an advantage there. I don't really know if that's true, but I'm suspecting it is. In the Dems Abroad category, I also think he has an advantage. And the reason why is that the people who live abroad and live, in other nations are not immune to the ideas circulating in those particular nations. And Bernie is overwhelmingly popular now abroad. especially in Europe, compared to anybody else who's running. So I'm thinking Bernie has the advantage. I don't know how big it is. And I'll put to you that Biden is also probably fairly popular because there's familiarity with Biden. But in Europe right now, okay, and in the face of very unpopular foreign policies followed by the United States, I'm sure that's a hindrance to Biden, and that we will find this when we see the results. Now, Vermont, we know, is going for Bernie. I don't think there's any trouble there. And we know that Maine is going for Bernie. There's no way Maine is going to go for Biden. Not with Bernie so close and with the people being so familiar with him. I don't see Biden winning there at all, in spite of the fact that Maine is a relatively conservative state. Now, Utah. I think, relatively speaking, that Bernie is surprisingly popular in Utah, even though it's a very conservative state. And at the rally he did in Utah earlier today, the enthusiasm and the commitment to Bernie was highly palpable. He did pretty well there in 2016. I haven't seen polls yet for Utah, so I can't say this based on the polling, but I think that he's going to win Utah and probably come close to majority, to a majority. Now, I've read some previous polls that indicate that he's surprisingly popular, in Arkansas as well. I don't think Biden's done any campaigning there. Okay, and I don't even know if he's done any large ad buys there. But I'd say, of what I've seen so far, that Biden is probably behind Bernie in Arkansas, as well. Now, why am I talking about just Biden, and Bernie? Well, because with Buttigieg dropping out of the race, and Klobuchar dropping out of the race, and Steyer dropping out of the race, I think that in the states I've mentioned thus far, the contest is going to be primarily between Biden, and Bernie. In many of the states, I think it's going to be this way. Now, in Arkansas, there may be Bloomberg to contend with as well. But from what I'd seen of some polling, it seemed like it was a surprise that Bernie was ahead, in Arkansas. So now we come to Oklahoma. And I think Bernie is also surprisingly strong, in Oklahoma. I know it's strange to say that. But he did fairly well in Oklahoma in 2016, and he has an organization there. And I think in the polling there, he's currently leading over Biden. I believe the next two states are going to be either Bloomberg or Biden states. And these are Alabama or Tennessee. And they amount to 116 delegates. That's a sizable batch. But Bernie will win some delegates in those particular states. It's doubtful that Biden will win 50% of the delegates out of those 116, if only because Bloomberg is still in the race and will be dragging Biden down in those two states, because all they've probably seen in those two states at this point is the ad campaigns of the various contenders. And Bloomberg's ads are likely to have been up in both of those states, but the people in those states, of course, are familiar with Joe Biden. Okay, and in Alabama, probably the older black people really like Biden. It's probably similar demographic and similar loyalties in Alabama as in South Carolina. Also, Tennessee is pretty conservative these days. I haven't seen any polling, okay, in but Tennessee with respect to Bernie. I have no reason to believe he's more popular than Biden, okay, in Tennessee. So I expect the establishment, okay, is going to win there. So let's say the establishment candidates get 60% of the delegates in Tennessee, okay, in Alabama. Then we're probably talking about them getting maybe 60 delegates, okay, and Bernie maybe coming out, okay, and maybe Warren and Bernie splitting the remaining the 44 delegates still remaining, with Bernie maybe getting 20 delegates or something like that. Okay. So, thus far, then, until you get from the bottom all the way up to Tennessee, it's not really dominant, okay, for Bernie yet. Most probably Biden is ahead, okay, by a little bit, with Bernie picking up quite a good many delegates from Oklahoma, Arkansas, Utah, Maine, okay, and Vermont, and also Dems abroad, okay, and American Samoa. But I would still suspect that Biden is going to pick up close to as many votes, or maybe more votes, okay, than Bernie, up to that point. But then we get to Colorado. Right now, the polls are showing that Bernie is going to slaughter Biden, okay, in Colorado, and that Bloomberg will not be immensely popular there either. So that's the way it looks. I don't know why it looks that way, but it looks that way. I should say that. I know Bernie has a very, very good campaign operation inside of Colorado, that he did very well in Colorado in 2016. And a lot of the same people are there. Okay, and Colorado is becoming a pretty progressive state over time. Some of the establishment figures in that state are strong, but the progressives are strong too, and have been fighting them for some time. And the polls say that Bernie is going to be dominant in that particular state. I think the polls are indicating he may get more than 50% in Colorado. I wouldn't be surprised if he picks up, I don't know, maybe 2/3 of the delegates there, something like that. Now we come to Minnesota. The polling I've seen, okay, in Minnesota shows it was pretty close between Bernie and also Klobuchar. But Klobuchar did not wait until after Super Tuesday to drop out. She's dropped out. She's gone. So who are people going to vote for tomorrow? In 2016, Bernie Sanders won Minnesota going away. So many of the Klobuchar voters have to have Bernie as their second choice. It seems to me that with Klobuchar dropping out instead of waiting until after Super Tuesday, she dropped out today, of course, and she went to Texas to endorse Joe Biden down there. I mean, without her in the race in Minnesota, who's going to get any substantial votes there except for Bernie? I mean, maybe Biden, is going to get a few. But I see Bernie getting 60%, maybe more of the delegates in Minnesota with Klobuchar dropping out. I think he could get 70 to 75% of the delegates, in Minnesota. In Massachusetts, Warren's home state, Bernie has been building a substantial lead over Warren in her home state. In the last polls I saw, it was now up to a 10% lead, in Massachusetts. And I think Warren has been falling out of favor very quickly with the progressives in Massachusetts. And her staying in the race now, when it appears to have devolved into a three-person race of Biden, Bernie, and also Bloomberg, the three Bs, as it were. Warren's progressive brand argues at this point with the centrists coalescing around Joe Biden. That argues very strongly for Warren, who has had poor showings in every state, to drop out and to endorse Bernie, the other progressive in her state. But she's not doing that. She seems to be staying into the race for the sole purpose of blocking Bernie and backing Biden. I mean, there's no evidence out there. There are no facts that say she's made a deal with Biden for the vice presidency. So there doesn't appear to be any reason for her to stay in there. As far as her thinking that she's the logical choice as a vice presidential candidate, if Biden should win in the second round, she has competition for that because Stacey Abrams has been spoken to by Biden, as we all know. And the talk is now that Stacey Abrams might consider becoming the vice presidential candidate of Joe Biden. And Joe Biden needs someone like her who's exciting with the centrist base, because he's certainly not exciting. I mean, he doesn't have a lot of campaign charisma for working people, whereas Stacey Abrams does. And Warren doesn't have a lot of campaign charisma either for working people. Her strong suit is really among suburban Caucasian voters. Biden and Stacey Abrams probably cover that well themselves. So why would Warren think that she has a better chance for the vice presidency than Stacey Abrams? I certainly don't see it. And she certainly can't expect that after she has been sabotaging Bernie for weeks and weeks and weeks, that at some point he's going to endorse her. That's just not going to happen. The fact remains that Warren has not responded to the changing situation and has not said that she will drop out. If Bernie beats her by 10 points or more in her home state, in fact, if he beats her at all in her home state tomorrow, the race is over for her. The chances are strongly against the likelihood that she'll be getting anything out of the race. Why then would she stay in it except to block Bernie Sanders and to line up with the centrists so she can gain some advantage in the Senate? How is that going to keep any progressives with her for the rest of the race? Doesn't look well for her, and she's not been acting in such a way as to keep the progressive part of her base within the state of of Massachusetts. I think she's gotten bad advice from the Obama and Hillary staffers she hired. She got bad advice from them uh, since they began to advise her. Since she got some money and she hired them, she hired the wrong people. So it seems to me Bernie looks very good in Colorado and Minnesota and Massachusetts. Does he look sufficiently good to get 60% of the vote in those three states? Well, maybe. I think with Klobuchar out of the race, he has a good chance to get 60% of the vote, in Minnesota. In Colorado, he could exceed that. In Massachusetts, he probably can't. It's probably closer to, maybe he'll split the vote, with Warren and have a lead of 5 to 10 points. Maybe in delegates, that's going to translate to, well, it could translate to as many as 2/3 of the delegates there. Because I don't think that Bloomberg looks very good there. And the others have dropped out. So there you are. I mean, I think that Bernie may be 50 to 55 of the Massachusetts delegates, and maybe 50 of the Minnesota delegates, and maybe 50 of the Colorado delegates. Then we get to Virginia, which is my state. Bernie is leading here today as well. He's leading here by 5 to 10 points, according to the polls, in the face of a great deal of institutional opposition from the establishment. He doesn't have any of the establishment crews supporting him. I mean, everybody is for Biden. The current governor of the state is for Biden. The previous governors of the state are for Biden. And the senators are for Biden. I mean, it's just unreal how the whole establishment here is lined up and back Biden. But in spite of that, Bernie has a 5 to 10 point lead in this state, in Virginia. I mean, it is revolutionary. He had great rallies here over the weekend. He's poised to win Virginia. Of course, it'll be a three-way race here. because there are votes that are going to go for Bloomberg in this suburban area. But the Bloomberg votes, which have been produced by very, very heavy advertising here, are going to hold back Joe Biden. I think Bernie could easily emerge with 40% of the delegates from here. There could well be pretty much a 40-30-30 split. Or 40-30-29 or something like that. Biden could even finish third here. And Bloomberg could end up taking votes away from Biden. In North Carolina, we have a similar situation. According to polls I've seen, Bernie now has a 10 to 15 point lead in North Carolina. Unexpected by me before this race. Now, Bloomberg and Biden are going to be fighting it out there for the centrist spot. There's no Jim Clyburn in North Carolina to help Joe Biden. And Bernie has a lot of supporters in North Carolina who are prominent in politics in that particular state. I think North Carolina goes for Bernie. And I think he may get 55 delegates out of 110. Maybe not. Maybe I'm being much too optimistic. Maybe I'm seeing this with rose-colored glasses. But in Colorado, Minnesota, Massachusetts, Virginia, and North Carolina, I am basing my views on recent polls that I've seen. In Texas, Bernie now has, again, according to polls, most probably a 10-point lead. There are 228 delegates in Texas. Texas has been bombarded with Bloomberg ads. Those ads are going to detract from Biden's votes. On the other hand, Hispanics in Texas are going to be overwhelmingly for Bernie. And Bernie probably has a lead among blacks in Texas as well. Because Texas is not Alabama or South Carolina. And the makeup of the black community in Texas is different. So I think that Bernie is going to win Texas. I don't know by how much, but I'm guessing he's going to get 40% of the popular vote. Whether that will get him half the delegates or not, I don't know. It depends on how Bloomberg and he split up the votes and how strong Warren turns out to be. I don't think Warren's going to be much of a factor in dragging votes from Bernie, though, in Virginia or in North Carolina. And I think Warren has a certain popularity in the suburban areas. In Virginia, in the areas around Washington, D.C., yes, but I think that popularity takes votes away from Biden, not votes away from Bernie. I don't think there's much of that going on around here. Not after the last month or two of Warren's campaigning, which seems to have been designed only to sandbag Bernie for no apparent reason. So now we get to California. Now I have to start out by stipulating and by asking the question, okay, how is Bernie? How many delegates are available in California? Here's the Times saying there are 415 delegates. That's the figure I've seen most of the time. But over the last few days, I've seen people who should know tell me there are 494 delegates at stake on Super Tuesday, okay, in California. If anyone knows what the facts are, okay, I'd like to hear them. But I've heard from Pasta Jardula in the last 2-3 days that the figure is 494. I heard from Greg Palast earlier today that figure is 494. I'd certainly like to know, because it makes a difference. Bernie has a big lead in California. I mean, right now it's probably 15 points. South Carolina seems to have had a little effect on those people voting tomorrow, which is still, of course, a majority of the state. But it doesn't look like it's had an overwhelming effect in actually building momentum in California for Joe Biden, who doesn't have much of a campaign organization in that state. It's another state where Hispanics are going to go overwhelmingly for Bernie, and they have a huge electorate in California. But also, black people are significant in that state as well. But I think that Bernie is very popular among them too, in California. The bottom line is, I expect that Bernie is going to emerge from California with 40% of the popular vote. Will that be worth 60% of the delegate vote? It depends. Klobuchar and Buttigieg are not going to be factors anymore. And a lot of their voters actually had Bernie as their number 2 choice. Now that we go into the primary with them having endorsed Joe Biden this evening. What that will be worth to Joe Biden in California, I don't know. They were not overwhelmingly popular in California anyway. And again, their second choices out there were frequently Bernie. In fact, the second choice to Biden out there, with respect to Biden voters, is also Bernie. With a plot afoot to steal a nomination from Bernie in the second round, that could possibly backfire. Anyway, I have a feeling Bernie's going to get 60% of the delegates out of California tomorrow. And my hunches here are that in spite of the rigging and cheating which is going to go on, like the Secretary of State out there has been engaged in the usual monkey business of trying to deny the vote to large numbers of people by refusing to give ballots to the independents where they will be able to record a vote for Bernie that will count. Okay, the people who want to get a ballot that will count for Bernie have to specifically ask for a Democratic crossover ballot. If they do not do so, the election officials at the polls are prohibited by the Secretary of State from letting the voters know that the only way their vote for independence is going to be counted, okay, is if they ask for and get a Democratic crossover ballot. And they're going to try to hand to the voters ballots that will either not contain a presidential preference or ballots whose presidential preference will not be counted. The rules given to the election officials at a local level have been rigging things in this way. In 2016, that caused 1.3 million votes in California not to count, and is probably the reason why Bernie did not win California outright in 2016. I don't think this year it's going to have the same effect. I think at most 150 to 200,000 people are going to be caught in this way, because Palast, okay, and his allies have been screaming as loud as possible, have been on alternative media all over, and have been in many areas in the state just informing people that they have to get a Democratic crossover ballot. And this year in California, people can register Democratic right at the polls if they want to, in order to vote for Bernie Sanders. They can't be denied a registration, and they can't be denied a Democratic ballot after the registration, if they want one. Under those conditions, I think it's very possible Bernie could get 40 to 45% of the vote in California and 60% of the delegates. So how do I round this up? I round it up in this way. What I expect to happen, okay, is that Bernie is going to average about 60% of the delegates that are available on Super Tuesday. Now, when you add to that the 56 delegates that he has now, my calculations tell me that he will be leaving Super Tuesday with 800 delegates. There are other forecasts that are far from that. I've seen a projection so far, I think it's from 538, that says Bernie will leave Super Tuesday with 556 delegates, and Biden will be in second with 473 delegates, which means Bernie will still have a lead, according to them, Super Tuesday. It just won't be that substantial, okay, a lead. I'm not in a position to make a projection for Biden, but I suspect that Biden will be more in the neighborhood of 300 to 350 delegates after Super Tuesday, and Bernie will be somewhere in the neighborhood of 800 delegates coming out of Super Tuesday. I think that's going to be the result. Now let's consider the following, just on the basis of the arithmetic. Okay? with 800 delegates coming out of Super Tuesday, and with one third of the delegate voting set by the end of Super Tuesday, there are 2/3 of the states and their delegates, actually 2/3 of the count of delegates, still to be heard from after Super Tuesday. Going into that part of the contest, Bernie will have 40% of the delegates already locked down. So Bernie will be not only on pace to win a majority of the delegates in the first round, he will be ahead of the necessary pace. And he will have a very substantial lead vis-a-vis his nearest competitor, who will probably be Biden, with 373 votes. So far, Warren has very few delegates. I don't think she'll pick up too many in California. Well, maybe she will, but it'll come out of the Bloomberg votes, okay, and the Biden votes. It won't come out of the Bernie votes. Not anymore. People are seeing what she's about. And they're saying, hey, she's not really a progressive. She's not acting like a progressive. So I think that the more votes that Bloomberg has, the more delegates that he has, are going to be a drag on Biden's totals, tend to drag him down. That's true in Texas also. They're not going to come out of Bernie. I mean, people who are going to vote for Bloomberg would never vote for Bernie as their second choice. Why the hell would they? Why did Bloomberg actually get in the race? He got in the race because he felt he had to, because he wanted to block Bernie. Why did he want to block Bernie? Well, apart from his general disagreement with policies and stuff like that. Bernie's wealth tax, 8% a year, 8% annually for people with Bloomberg's money. Let's say Bloomberg is worth $60 billion. That means that in the first year, if Bernie passes his taxes, in the first year Bernie is president, Michael Bloomberg stands to lose $4.8 billion on the wealth tax alone. Then he's got the income tax to consider. In the last 2 years, Bloomberg has made $10 billion, roughly $5 billion a year. Bernie's taxes on the very wealthy would wipe that out. His income basically would be confiscated. Why wouldn't he decide to enter the race himself and spend as much as it took? If it took $2 billion or $3 billion, why wouldn't he spend that? After all, if Bernie gets in the second year, Bloomberg would have another $5 billion taken, or roughly that. Maybe a little less, because he would have lost $5 billion already. In the third year, you get to the point. Over a period of 8 years, Bloomberg is going to lose 2/3 of that $60 billion. So of course he'd spend whatever he thought it would take to get Bernie out of the race, to beat Bernie. So there can't be any Bernie voters or Bernie second choicers who are supporting Bloomberg now. It just doesn't compute. So the only person Bloomberg would be taking votes away from would be Biden. Or maybe Warren. That's in Texas. Klobuchar and Buttigieg have dropped out. They'd be part of that pool anyway. That's going to help Joe Biden a little. But with Bloomberg there running those ads in Texas for ages, and Biden not being able to afford to put up a lot of ads in Texas, and not being on the ground. I mean, Biden certainly can't expand the centrist base in Texas. So, I don't think the situation looks that good in Texas for him, in spite of the last minute endorsements by Klobuchar and Buttigieg. Steyer hasn't endorsed Bernie, but I'll tell you the truth. I wouldn't be a bit surprised to hear that there's been a surprise endorsement of Bernie by Tom Steyer. I wouldn't be at all surprised. Because I think Steyer is probably pretty pissed off at the centrists right now. Because he knows very well that they're handing the election to Trump. And Steyer did not spend what he spent on this campaign for the sake of blocking Bernie. He got into this campaign to get his message about the climate out. That's why he went in. So, I just don't see it for Biden. As I said, I see Bernie getting close to 2/3 of the delegates that are available. I see him coming out of Super Tuesday with a lead of 800 to less than 400, basically doubling the delegate votes of his nearest competitor, and having having roughly 55 to 60% of the total number uh, of delegates allocated through Super Tuesday, and 60% of the delegates that are allocated on Super Tuesday. I think that the states we've seen him in, 3 of the 4 states we've seen Bernie in so far, are going to emerge from the primaries as among Bernie's weakest states, not among his strongest states. Of course, okay, he did very well in the Nevada caucus, so that was a very good one, but for Bernie Sanders. So here we are. Okay, I'd like to look at your comments very, very badly, but my Chrome is on the fritz again. I think after this broadcast, I'm going to have to reinstall it because it's just not operating properly. And so what I'm going to have to do now is shut down Chrome again and come back in so I can see what you've had to say. So hang out for a minute. This should not affect your actual broadcast, but only my view of things on Facebook. So, if I am interrupted in any way, I will be right back. Hang in there, please. Okay. Okay, so here I am again. I see that quite a number of people have joined this broadcast. Hey, Barbara Warnig and Carmen Muniz. And Kylan Taskovich. Not sure how you pronounce it. Hang on a second, I'll change my view, make it a little more palatable. Get rid of the infinite regress. Here we are. Let me see if I can see meanwhile. I seem to have control over my scroll bar. Russ says the New York Times has a paywall. Okay, I love the graph. I know they have a paywall, but fortunately I got by it, okay, on this occasion. And Dolores says, "What's up, Doc?" Steve says, "Shared. Thank you very much for sharing. Please do share more." And Steve says, "California will bring it home for Bernie tomorrow." Yeah, I believe California will, except for Alex Padilla, who, of course, is trying to rig it for Biden. We all know that. Carmen says, "The Coloradans get to smoke weed, so they are much more conscious, okay, and therefore progressive because they're smoking weed, right?" Carmen says, "There, sorry, autocorrect got me." Yeah, gets a lot of us. Stacy says, 40% of Warren's second choice is for Bernie. If she dropped out today, it would ensure an unbrokered convention, and she knows this. Yep, that's what she's up to. That's what she's up to. But it's not, that second choice of 40% is not second choice, okay, in all states. Okay, I don't think her second choice is, okay, for Bernie in Texas, for example. Okay, they may be in California. They may be for Bernie, or even more, maybe for Bernie in Massachusetts. But I don't think it's uniform at 40% across the country, Stacy. Karma says, "Yep, that's what she's up to." Kylan Taskovich says, "Warren's message no longer resonates with voters. Anyone who supported anybody else but Bernie feels like they've only heard a Biden proxy speak to them." Yes. Kay says, "Stacey Abrams was with Bloomberg. She's a sellout." Well, yeah, she was, but of course, I don't know that Bloomberg wants to be president. She sold out to Bloomberg. But if Biden makes a deal with Stacey Abrams, and maybe even the Bloomberg deal with Stacey Abrams includes her willingness to be Joe Biden's vice presidential candidate, it may be that Bloomberg really got into this in order to ensure Biden's nomination, not his own nomination. And Carmen says Biden doesn't even like uh, um, 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 doesn't even like black people. I'm sorry to stutter over that, folks, but gets me very angry. Sometimes when I get very angry, I stutter, and sometimes when I get very angry, I totally forget myself and I don't stutter at all. Anyway, Carmen says Abrams is also a neoliberal. I know. Stacy says Abrams is fake, though. She's a conservative CFR member. Hmm. And Steve says Biden thinks tomorrow is Super Thursday. Yeah, I noticed that earlier today. He's losing his mind, poor guy. It's really sad at this point. Well, I hope he keeps saying Super Thursday. That would at least deliver some amusement to what's going on in Texas. Carmen says Warren is just in it to obstruct Bernie. I think so. And Colin Taskovich says, need help applying that Bernie block? I don't need any help because I'm not involved in any Bernie block. Steve says, if you're voting in California tomorrow, take your sample ballot with you. They can scan it to find your ballot. Also, take an ID with you because even though it's not required to have an ID, they're probably going to ask you for it anyway. Karen says Warren will definitely grab Klosich to half the delegates in Minnesota. I don't see that, Kylan Taskovich. Not at all. No way, Jose. No way, Kylan. Not going to happen. Not after Bernie's performance in 2016, his organization there, his advertising there, his rallies there, and with Klobuchar dropping out of the race, no way she can throw her delegates to Warren. That is not going to happen. And Kay says, when are people going to start bitching about Joe's medical exam and records like they did Bernie's? He has dementia or something going on. Okay, my Chrome is again on the fritz. I'm sorry. I have to ask you to hang in there again. I will be right back. Okay, the video should still be going on. I'm doing everything I can to restore stability on this. Ah. So Kay says, I got back to Carmen. Let's say. So Kay says, there we go. I've got some really good comments going on here. I should be able to get to those in just a minute. Stacy says, same thing in Maryland. All the establishment is for Biden. But I hear Bernie is leading. Yeah, I expected them to go for Biden, of course. They were very close to the Obama administration and the establishment in Maryland and also Virginia. I mean, they're just establishment. I mean, Steny Hoyer is one of the leading politicians in Maryland. He's about as establishment as they come. Carmen says, that's because Bernie is love and Virginia is for lovers. Thank you, Carmen. Barbara says, God, I hope so. Kay says that our younger friends in North Carolina are working their butts off for Bernie. Steve says, California will deliver. Barbara says, I'm voting in Massachusetts tomorrow morning. I'm so anxious about the results. Yeah, you have reason to be. Though I think Bernie's going to win, you still have reason to be. Carmen says, let's be real. Bernie is the winner except when the DNC obstructs him via superdelegate underhandedness, rigging, cheating. Not only that, but when the state parties obstruct him in various ways by rigging the vote, as they're now doing in California. Don't forget that. That's another way to rig the vote, and they're doing it. Good luck to our candidate. And Steve says, we're all nervously optimistic. And Stacy says, I don't think people are going to vote for someone who obviously can't win, though. That's Warren. And Kay says, Bernie just raised $20,000 in the time the St. Paul rally has been going on. Go, Bernie. Yeah, I'll bet he's been great in the St. Paul rally. I was able to catch some of Omar's speech. She is fantastic. She is just a fantastic campaigner. Yeah, Tlaib and Omar and AOC, they are marvelous campaigners. I got a taste, okay, of Ayanna Pressley also when she saved Warren's bacon at one of Warren's rallies where Warren got, okay, some opposition. And she was pretty great too. Barbara says Warren will lose her Senate seat over this. She is exposed. Yeah, I was speculating today that Joe Kennedy III is running against Ed Markey in the primary tomorrow. And he was ahead in the polls. So Joe Kennedy III may win and take Ed Markey's seat. But if Ed Markey wants a Senate seat back, he might just run against Warren in the primary in 2022. He'd likely win against her just on the strength of the Green New Deal by itself. Between that and Markey's support for Medicare for All, okay, and Markey emerging totally as a Sanders Democrat, he could make real trouble for Warren. And his name recognition, of course, in Massachusetts is fantastic. Steve Gonzo said, dropouts rally with Biden as you speak. Yeah, I know they're rallying, but they have the charisma of frogs. What are they going to do for Biden? They don't have the charisma, okay, of Ilhan Omar, okay, of one single finger on the very small hand of Ilhan Omar. Steve says, I've canvassed in Hispanic neighborhoods in California. They love Bernie. Yeah, they loved Bernie in They loved him in the Nevada caucus. The same forces are at play in California and in Texas. The same organizations, the same backers, the same enthusiasm. It's going to be like that in those other two states as well. And there's going to be a tremendous influence on the primary. Oops. Well, Chrome is going out on me again. I have no feel for why this is happening. I am not even using that much of my CPU. It's strictly a matter of Chrome going crazy. But I can compensate for that by going out and coming in again, which is what I'm going to do. So, see you in a minute. Okay, now I have exactly one tab open in my Chrome the browser. Okay, I have an i7 machine, and I've got 16 gigs of RAM in it, and Chrome is just going crazy. So Barbara Wernick says, Biden cannot beat Trump. Simple truth. Trump will crush him. I know. I know. Colin Taskovich says, I can only imagine how tense and scripted that event has to be. This is the Texas event, I assume. And Carlin says, if Bernie doesn't get 51% of the delegates available Super Tuesday, there will be a contested convention. I'm not entirely sure of that, but yeah, it's much more likely if he doesn't get 51% of the delegates that are available on Super Tuesday. But I am projecting he will get 60% of the delegates available Super Tuesday. Russ says, we'll know Wednesday when you go over the counts. Yes, we will. Though I may be going over some of them on tomorrow night. Barbara says, substantial lead. I read that already. Carlin says it's an inhumane income. It is. Carmen says Biden isn't a competitor. He's an establishment installation. Yes. Barbara says block Bernie is their mantra. They're scared when a Bloomberg is even considered. Carmen says the DNC is going to reimburse Bloomberg for his expenses to obstruct Bernie anyway. They can't. They don't have enough money, Carmen. What Bloomberg has done is basically to give away all this money, including a huge amount of money to the DNC, just to keep them operational. They won't have the money to return anything to Bloomberg. I mean, they're going to spend it all to try to protect their centrists, and Bloomberg knows that. Steve Day smiles, and Carmen says, two Florida vets are suing to block Bernie to keep him off the ballot, citing that he's not a real Democrat. Why is it always Florida to mess up a good thing? Maybe because Florida is controlled by Republican crooks. I mean, literally, Republican crooks. I mean, Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis. God. Does anyone else ever watch the Nomiki show on YouTube? Yes, I do. She's very educated in the actual make and corruption in the DNC. She had a show on today that just made me sick. I knew it was corrupt, but I didn't realize how bad it really is. Yeah, I've been watching that too. I try not to miss any of her shows because she is an insider. She does know what's going on. And as much as I study these matters from the outside, I haven't been in at the meetings. Lana says Biden is a mess. I don't want to be unkind, but can you imagine Biden and Trump on the debate stage? I certainly can. I think Trump is going to bully him all over the stage. Steve says, "Your stuttering doesn't us, Doc." You probably meant to say it doesn't bother us. Well, thank you, Steve. That is nice to hear, but of course it will always bother me. Stuttering really bothers people who are stutterers. Barbara says no. Gloria says Bernie changed his registration to Democrat in 2019 per the DNC rules to run for president. I don't believe he changed his registration in Vermont. I think he might have made a deal with them that he didn't have to do that. But anyway, I'm not sure it matters because he will probably, once this race is over, right. Now I suppose he'll stay registered as a Democrat if he's the president, right? And he ran as a Democrat. But if he has to go back to the Senate, he'll probably change it back to independent. Okay, looks like I'll be gone for some seconds again and have to come back because this is happening. I can probably get this fixed by reinstalling Chrome, but of course that won't help tonight. So if you'll just bear with this a little while longer, we should be able to get done. I'm sorry it's interfered with things. It's interfering with things now. Okay, here I am again. Yeah, that's why I'm going to reinstall it. Because maybe, okay, it needs an update. I mean, what it's doing is it's cycling and it's using more and more, okay, of my memory as we go through time. Carmen says, I remember that you told me that. I just want to let Dr. Firestone know in case he doesn't. Thanks, Carmen. And Stacy. And Steve says, bother. Stacy says, we can't stand Steny. My congressman is Raskin. Yay, Raskin. Okay, I think he is Marcus Raskin's kid, isn't he? Not AOC, but pretty damn good. Russ says, I'm enjoying some Do-si-dos Girl Scout cookies while you talk. And I am enjoying some Charles Shaw while I talk. I ration myself 1 ounce of Charles Shaw's, the red blend for this show. Kay says, Chris Matthews retired on air tonight on MSNBC. 1 down and too many to go. Who do you think is going to get Chris's spot? Do you think they'll go to Chris Hayes? If they really want a Bernie supporter in there or someone who won't be hostile to Bernie, they got only one on staff right now, and that's probably Chris Hayes. And Ginger Duran says, I worry about California ballot shenanigans. I have to register a protest against that word. Shenanigans is kind of a funny word because, yes, it means foul play, okay, of one sort or another, but it's more in the vein of foul play, let boys will be boys. I never think of it as shenanigans. I'm not so polite. I worry about California ballot cheating. It's cheating. It's not shenanigans. It's outright cheating. It's illegal, and those people should be sent to jail. That's what I think. Barbara Wernick says, I mean, they've got their hands in our pockets. They're stealing money out of our pockets by cheating Bernie. That's what they're doing to us. They're thieves. Barbara Wernick says, I've been following Kennedy. He's a neo-lib. Yeah, I know he's a neo-lib. He's much more of a neo-lib than Teddy Kennedy was. Carmen said, don't remind me. I'm a nervous eater. It's Super Tuesday tomorrow. I've been snacking all day. Lana says, yes, he is. Now replying to Barbara. Ginger says, Caroline Kennedy endorsed Joe Biden. Well, after all, wasn't Caroline Kennedy the ambassador to Japan in the Obama administration? I mean, the Kennedys got very cozy with the Obamas in 2009, just before Teddy died. Stacy says, W7 here, maybe it's version 7, 16 tabs open. Yeah, usually I can open up lots and lots of tabs too. I don't know what's happening. Carmen says maybe Chrome needs an update. Yeah, well, as soon as I get off this broadcast, I'm going to do that and see if it makes a difference. Russ says good riddance to him. Stacy says Crystal Ball did a great segment on how the Dems are all making money for their pussyhatting with Trump in office, so they would rather lose than let Bernie get in. Yeah, I know. And she knows exactly how they make their money and exactly why they would rather lose to Trump rather than allow Bernie in. Yeah, for them, this is a matter of their money. It's their money versus our money. I mean, Bernie means money for us, and Bernie means that a lot of them aren't going to have jobs. Okay, and Lana says, not going to miss him, Kay. Kay says, I won't miss him either. Never could stand him, Kay, at all. Well, there was one time when I found him entertaining. I think it was way back in the 90s. I really started to dislike him when Obama got into office, though. Oh. There it goes again. It's doing it again, folks. Okay. Okay, thank you for hanging in. I'm still here plugging away. And Lana says, I plan on joining Ilhan Omar for a watch party and having a much needed drink. Good. Enjoy it. Ginger says Rising with Crystal Ball is a good show to watch. Crystal is the anti-Rachel Maddow. She certainly is. She certainly is. I mean, right now she and Sagar are wonderful. Kay says she watches every day. Stacy says, oh, go ahead and be unkind. Stacy says, if Manchin can be a Democrat, anybody can be. Kay says, I'm doing my good night beers. Bud Light for me, laugh out loud. Ginger says, you're absolutely correct about the word the shenanigans. I stand corrected. I was trying to be polite. Words matter. Barbara says, yes, she was. I know you were, but everybody's been trying to be so polite. On Status Coup, there's Jordan. And he's saying shenanigans. Okay, and Jen Dies is also saying shenanigans. I mean, they know it's cheating. They think it's cheating. We need to call a spade, people. A spade. Dale Weaver says everything continues smoothly here. That's great, Dale. Thank you. Lana says Barbara Wernig and two other people joined. I guess you were dropped and joined again. Thank you. Kay says, I heard a phone call between Obama and Pete. Did the cheat made sure Pete endorsed Joe Biden? Well, I never doubted he was going to endorse Joe Biden. Never doubted he would do that. Wasn't a surprise. I think Bloomberg will drop out soon and endorse Joe Biden. I mean, why wouldn't he? He doesn't seem like he has a chance to win himself because he did such a poor job when he got into the debates. He immediately showed that he was unfit to lead the country. So I don't think he has much chance. And since Biden appears to be coming back, he'll probably gamble a stamp and support Biden all the way. Barbara says Crystal is spectacular. Steve says, good night all, trying to stay up to catch Tim Black. Okay, Steve, have a good time with Tim. He's probably out in California with you now. So, see you over there, Steve, says Dale. And Ginger says, politeness is out, laugh OL. Well, I don't mind, being polite. Sometimes. I try to be polite. But Stacy says, shenanigans is like dipping pigtails in ink. Yes, it's not stealing votes. Stealing votes is not the shenanigans. Kay says, night, Steve. I won't be far behind you. And Steve says, night, Kay. And I'm not going to be far behind you either because I think I'm going to say good night too. But thank you very much for coming. And please stay for long enough so I can remind you to share, like, and subscribe when my YouTube goes up in just a few minutes. And please become a patron at www.patreon.com/Joe_Firestone. I know there are many worthy people to support, and I am not conceited enough to say that I am the worthiest, but I do work hard to give you what I consider to be the truth. So please do occasionally contribute. Thank you. And let me just make one last check to see if you have made any more comments. Barbara says thank you and night all, and Stacy says night night, and Russell says see you again soon. I hope tomorrow, Russ. I hope tomorrow. Tomorrow is one of my nights. Lana says good night. Okay, good night all. I'll see you tomorrow night. Hopefully with some real good news. I'll probably be going on late though tomorrow night. Late Eastern time anyway.